I want you to know how PBMs make money. I want you to feel something other than indifference about what you learned today. Then I want you to take some action. All right. Here's the problem. Price is a concern for self-funded employers, even more so down the road. No easy way exists to eliminate information asymmetry. This, this is the strategy of non-fiduciary PBMs. I don't care what business model you label it, whether you label it pass-through, transparent, traditional. I've seen the contracts. Most of them say we're transparent or pass through, but they really behave like traditional pharmacy benefit managers, making revenue for themselves in a deceptive fashion any way you allow them. The difference between a pass through and a tradition and a transparent versus a traditional is that if you are sophisticated and you know what to look for, usually you can demand radical transparency. If you're sophisticated extremely, usually you can demand radical transparency. All right, I talked about how PBMs make it difficult to ascertain their fees. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a bit. But here's an example of that exact problem. This is the director of compensation and benefits for a large health plan. Well, I shouldn't, relatively speak, for us, for us, uh, large. But he's speaking on behalf of their employees and dependents, which hover around 30,000 total. And the broker says we're having trouble getting access to the information from even our own internal peers. And the director of compensation and benefits bites on it. The problem with PBMs, folks, starts with the contract. It doesn't start with a claims repricing. It starts with the contract. Here's an example of what information symmetry looks like. And so just to be clear, information asymmetry is when one party has access to information that another party doesn't have access to. The party that has the information leverages that information to its financial advantage, whether they have more information or whether they have more knowledge to interpret the information that they do have. All right. And so that's what information asymmetry is. Information success is just the opposite. We provide, when we pay out rebates, we provide a receipt for those rebate payments at the claim level. And so some of this information that you see in this document is redacted for privacy reasons, but it's populated when we provide rebates to our clients. That's information symmetry. What most plan sponsors and their advisors are receiving today. And let me back up. I'm going to be saying some very bold things, and I won't preface my comments all the time. So let me do that right now. Not uh, not every PBM is a bad actor. I want to get that out of the way. There's very few absolutes in pharmacy benefits management. So if I'm saying something and you believe it applies to every pharmacy benefit manager or every plan sponsor or every benefits broker or consultant, just put the phrase generally speaking in front of it. Generally speaking, most plan sponsors, what they receive from their PBM is maybe a 4 or 5 line item report that says for retail 30, here's what you're getting paid. For retail 90 brand, here's what you're getting paid. For mail order, here's what you're getting paid. For specialty drugs, here's what you're getting paid. And that's it. That's it. There's no, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to get to lowest net cost. You can't determine lowest net cost by not having information specific to each claim. And see, in that article that Adam wrote, and I'm hearing this far too often, AWP is bad, MAC is bad, rebates are bad. No, they're not. It is the manipulation of those pricing drivers that are bad. It's like if you got a pimple on your nose, instead of just popping the pimple or putting some Clearasil on it, you chop your nose off. When I get pimples, I normally just run hot water on the towel, real hot water, scorching, and then I just put the towel on the pimple and then kind of dry it out and let nature take its course. I don't chop my nose off. AWP is not bad. Let's get that clear. Now again, I've got 2 decades of experience in this. In all parts of the drug reimbursement and distribution system, every single part I've had a vital part of. Trust me when I tell you this. This is all I've done. It is manipulation of those uh, pricing cost drivers that are bad, not the drivers themselves. So that leads me to the status quo, and I'm going to pick it up here. And by the way, so my day has been flying into Charleston, checking into the hotel, and waiting 2 hours to get into my room. This webinar is coming up, and I say, listen, I need a spot. They want to charge me for a meeting room that we have already. They want to charge me for an extra day. Say, no, I'll go to the lounge. They kick me out of the lounge because they're closing because they don't have people to work in it. And then I finally get in a room just in the nick of time for this webinar, and housekeeping is knocking on the door and calling on the phone. That's my Michael Jordan crying meme moment. That gets me to the status quo. And if you have questions, send them to me via chat. And then I'll get to them when we have a break, usually towards the end. Send them to me via chat. That leads me to the status quo. Plan sponsors enter into an agreement with a non-fiduciary pharmacy benefit manager that calls for artificially too low PBM administrative fees. And by the way, I've seen it where the administrative fees, just because administrative fees are higher than what you're accustomed to paying or seeing, I've seen administrative fees as high as $8 or $9 per member per month, and all of the hidden cash flows are still in the contract. So, I mean, it's just printing money. We're a transparent pass-through PBM. You know that because we're going to charge you $8 or $9 per member per month, or $9 or $10 per paid claim. And that's how we make our money, except it isn't the only way they make their money. So the status quo says this: plan sponsor enters into an agreement with a non-fiduciary pharmacy benefit manager that calls for artificially too low PBM administrative fees. Usually $6 per paid claim, $7 per member per month, and up depending upon maybe the additional services that, PBMs these days should be including all of their ancillary services in that fee. It shouldn't be a la carte anymore. Let's just stop with that. Let's all the fees embedded, get it in there. And then the PBM, when it's artificially too low, below that $7 per member per month, worst case scenario, there's no charge for the administrative fee. Or $1 per member per month, $2 per member, whatever it is, unknowingly, the plan sponsor has given the PBM the green light to augment its management fee, what it's charging for its service through these hidden cash flow buckets. These are the three big ones. There's components of these three big ones, but these are the major ones. And we're going to talk about some of these here. Here's another example of that previous slide that I just shared with you. Now, remember, I told you, I started in the industry here. I remember small molecule brand drugs dominating how PBMs generated their profit. Remember, mandatory mail order, that came along right around this time. That got cut off. And then now, the specialty drug rebates on the pharmacy side. Now, that is being cut off. So PBMs have already now in 2020 moved this to MBDCs, medical benefit drug claims. Not just the spreads and the ingredient costs, but goodness, the rebates that are being paid on these drugs. Plan sponsors aren't even really looking at it. Only the most sophisticated are looking at that and trying to capture those dollars. My experience is, I mean, brokers, they don't want to stir the pot. All that money on the medical side, it's really behaving like they're fully insured. A self-insured plan sponsor is really behaving like it's fully insured on the medical side. Any PBM today, whether it is vertically integrated or not, just standalone, can and should be working on the medical side to get as many drugs that they've identified that they can move over to the pharmacy benefit using all of the drug utilization management tools in our toolkit, and then capturing those rebate dollars, taking advantage of site of care management, capturing those rebate dollars, and lowering the ingredient cost. So listen, I believe in PBMs and what we do. There is a need for, despite what some naysayers say, let's just get rid of all the PBMs. The entity saying that own pharmacies. Eh, I mean, of course you would want to get rid of us. But there's value in what we do. My problem are the hidden cash flows to non-fiduciary PBMs that dominate how they generate money for themselves. And let's take a quick look. I touched on this, the pharmacy distribution and reimbursement system. You got to understand the business model. The first thing you got to recognize is, um, outside of a mail order pharmacy, for example, Transparent RX, we never control the drug, ever. It's never in inventory for us. Now, if a PBM owns a mail order pharmacy, listen, is it a conflict of interest? Yeah. But if that PBM is fiduciary, it wouldn't matter. That's the first thing you got to understand. So, as a pharmacy benefit manager, we contract with pharmacies to have sites from which prescriptions can be dispensed to our plan participants. And then we've got to have clients to provide those services to. Those clients are third-party payers or health plans. That's the contract piece. Now the financial flow. We reimburse pharmacies for the prescriptions that they dispense. We pay them. We pay them with the money that we receive from our clients, the third party payers, and the health plans. This is when the problems begin. The first problem, the inflow of cash, and this is complex, very complex. The inflow of cash in the form of formulary rebates, or just let's just call it manufacturer revenue, is too low. I showed you two slides from two different reputable sources that say 50% of a PBM's profit, not revenue, profit comes from the manufacturer. When PBMs say we're only keeping 1 or 2%, they're talking about the formulary rebates. Those aren't the only monies they're receiving from manufacturers. We're going to talk about that. I promise you, you're going to learn something new. So the inflow of cash with the intent to lower the cost of the drug is too low. The second problem, the inflow of cash for the cost of the product, the ingredient cost, from the PBM's client, the third party payer, the health plan, third party payer, employers, unions, coalitions, municipalities, state, federal government, is too high. Let me talk about the third problem before I dig into that second one further. That third problem is, look who sits atop this entire system. You do. Your clients do. Yet you know the least about how it works. I hope over the course of maybe the next 6 to 12 months, what you learn will be disturbing. Even though you may know it's bad, it is probably far worse than you think. That second problem, the reimbursement to the PBM by the PBM's client, the purchaser of PBM services, the spread. I want to show you exactly how that manifests itself. The drug pricing standard, which forms the basis for discounted prices, is known as average wholesale price. We kind of refer to it as ain't what's paid because it's not. It doesn't make it bad. Let me illustrate. Generic drugs and spreads primarily, they're going to be taking place uh, a lot more in generic drugs just because of the volume that the utilization from generic drugs compared to brand drugs or specialty drugs. The margins are gigantic if a PBM is taking advantage of spread pricing. Two prices, AWP and MAC. Those are the prices that the PBMs control. If you have lesser of logic, then you're going to also be adding, you got to have lesser of logic. That prevents the manipulation or helps to prevent the manipulation of AWP. That's one way. There's other ways, but we don't have time for that. But lesser of logic says AWP minus whatever you agree to. The MAC price, which is a flat price, is it's not a list price. It's not an MSRP. The price is the price. Usual and customary, which is considered the street price, which is uh, set by the pharmacies, and then the patient's copay. That's your lesser of logic there. So the PBM's client should be getting billed the lesser of those four pricing benchmarks. Now your larger employers or health insurance carriers or state governments, they can leverage additional, more aggressive pricing, average manufacturer price, average sales price, right? They can leverage those type of prices when you're buying hundreds of millions of dollars in product. But for the average employer, those are going to be the four. So let's really quickly take a look at how a spread takes place. I talked about AWP, and right, there's going to be a discount off of AWP. And then there's going to be a MAC price. There's no discount off the MAC price. Whatever that list is the PBM has for your group, your client, and you should be able to get access to that MAC list. Again, that's kind of like not having access to rebate remittance forms, those receipts we showed you. And so let's take a look at levothyroxine here, 100 microgram, tablet 30, AWP 562. Listen, this is how high some of these AWPs are. That's how high some of those AWPs are. Stay with me. So levothyroxine 5, let's call it 560. Let's say you negotiate a discount off of AWP of 85%. Of 85%. Let's call it 475. So let's call that a $475 discount, just to keep it simple. We're looking at $85 billed to the employer for the cost of that drug. But the employer doesn't know what the PBM is paying the pharmacy. I mean, come on. That's like giving your kid access to your wallet or to your purse and saying, hey, go to the store and get some bread and some milk and some cheese. They take out $100. Come back and you want the change. Come back and they give you $5 in change. And you had no idea they took $100 out of your purse. You got to know what the pharmacy is being paid. Don't take the PBM's word for it. And the contract, while it won't jump off the page at you, it'll tell you that whatever you pay them, they're going to pay the pharmacy less and keep the difference. Requires a trained eye to see that. So $85 here. Let's call the MAC price, let's call it $15. That's what the price is on the MAC list for this product. Now, look at what the pharmacy paid to put the product on the shelf. That's the invoice cost. That's the invoice cost. So if this product was not on the MAC list, right? PBMs control the MAC list. What products are on it? They control it. What prices are they're listed at on the MAC? We control it. The PBM could reimburse this pharmacy 100% markup, pay a $2 dispensing fee. Their cost is $10 out of pocket, leaving a $75 spread. That's how spreads happen. Here's why I say AWP isn't bad, provided you can demand radical transparency in the contract. The only thing that matters is, what is the pharmacy being paid? And am I paying you more than what you're paying the pharmacy? And if I am, do we get the overages back in your performance, or do you keep it? That, that that's that's why AWP, MAC, even rebates that folks say are bad aren't bad, as long as you're getting back in return what the PBM has negotiated in terms of discounts back in your cost. And then you pay the PBM a fee for that service. The tough part is driving that sort of disclosure in the contract. So let's, if the MAC price is 15, the PBM's cost doesn't change, right? Our contracts with the pharmacies are set in stone. We can't change our contracts on the fly with the pharmacies. So the price doesn't change whether it's AWP for you or MAC for another company in the same city. So it's still $10. That's a $5 spread. A PBM could do this to a client that spends $5 million for an entire month and stop. They could do this for an entire month. AWP, take a drug off the MAC, put it on, make it AWP for an entire month, back up the Brinks truck to the bank, and then stop, and you would never know the difference. That's why you got to have PBM that contractually says we're not going to behave like that. And if we do, we're in big trouble financially and legally. That's the part PBMs have avoided. They've been given a green light to behave like that and not even get as much as a slap on the wrist. The state of Ohio, about 3 years back, public information, they pivoted in how they evaluated their PBM's performance. Unlimited resources the state of Ohio has. Smart, extremely intelligent people. The power of the attorney general's office behind them. For all this time, they never thought to consider at the end of the year, how much money are you keeping? They pivoted. It, it had been discounts off of AWP. It has been ASP minus that we're adding into our lesser of logic to get us the best price. It had been all those things. And still, and I'm not saying what CVS and Optum did was illegal. I don't believe it was. It just was opaque. It was different from what the state of Ohio believed they had in a partner. The state of Ohio uncovered in 1 year, let's call it $250 million just in spreads. Just in spreads. And if Greg were here today, to a woman and to a man, he would tell you it's not necessarily what we're saying is information we've never had before, which is true. But more importantly, it's information they never thought to consider or evaluate before. Information asymmetry. Misleading contract language. I'm going to speed up here. MAC list. I've talked about those rebates. Uh, MAC list. PBMs can have multiple MAC lists. The employer's MAC list will be less comprehensive and less aggressive, meaning there's not as many drugs on the MAC list. You saw the impact between AWP minus and MAC in the example that I showed you about levothyroxine, and the price is going to be higher. The PBM has MAC lists with pharmacies as well. They can be different. The pharmacy is getting paid by the PBM, so it's going to be more comprehensive and more aggressive in terms of pricing and the number of drugs listed on the product. That creates spreads. I talked about manufacturer revenue and formulary rebates on the business model slide, the U.S. pharmacy distribution and reimbursement system. I talked about how the inflow of cash in the form of rebates is too low. It's not because the formulary rebate is too low. It's because that's the rebate that the unsophisticated plan sponsor is getting, while all these different manufacturer revenues to the PBMs are staying in-house to the PBM. One example of that, go to your contract, look at it. And in the rebate definition, the definition set the foundation for everything. Look at the rebate definition. Uh, Rebates will be paid based upon utilization, something like that. Well, all rebates aren't based on utilization. Rebates can be based on access and they can be based on market share. They are not can be, they are. And when the contract doesn't explicitly rule out the PBM keeping those dollars, guess what's going to happen? That's why they don't want you to have the claim level detail. Real quick, about 4 years ago, this is dirty laundry. Uh, Express Scripts sued Kaleo, a specialty drug manufacturer, because Kaleo refused to pay rebates that I believed it owed. Otherwise, Express Script wouldn't make this public information. I'm sure Kaleo thought Express Scripts was just not going to sue because they didn't want this information divulged. But the point I want to make, for one drug, Evzio, the formulary rebates are here. The administrative fees are here. These administrative fees are manufacturer revenues. These are manufacturer administrative fees, not administrative fees to get access to an electronic claims adjudication platform, not to get access to 24/7 customer support or an account manager or access to a pharmacy network. This is completely different, but it's deceptive. It dwarfs the formulary rebate. Price protection rebates. These are sometimes referred to as inflation uh, programs. If a manufacturer increases the price of a product by uh, a certain amount, then an additional rebate kicks in to the PBM. These rebates dwarf formulary and administrative fees. Value-based contracting, also referred to as outcomes-based rebates, have been happening for over a decade. Look it up if you don't believe me. Just Google it. See what you can find. Where the manufacturer pays a refund to the pharmacy benefit manager if the drug doesn't reach at a pre-agreed upon metric between the PBM and the manufacturer. If it falls short, either a portion of the original cost is refunded back, or it could be as much as 100% of the original cost is refunded back. The other problem with this is that some PBMs have in their contracts that their clients, you don't get to keep this money. We get to keep this money. It's deceptive. It won't jump off the page at you. I took this from a competitor's contract, okay? And it will say, we, blank is the PBM here, may receive other compensation from manufacturer for performance of various programs and services, including for formulary compliance initiatives, clinical services. Outcomes-based rebates are clinical. It's clinical. The rebates are paid based upon a clinical metric. Inflation protection programs. These are uh, the rebates, price protection rebates that I talked about here. Medical benefit management services, medical benefit drug claims. The PBM is saying we're keeping all of this money. This compensation is not part of formulary rebates or associated administrative fees. You've gotten smarter. PBMs, you got to, hey, listen, you got to give it to us, right? I include ourselves in that as well. We're PBM as well. But they're already 5 years ahead and they're planning the next move already. They already know if the federal government or our clients uh, get more sophisticated and thwart our efforts to keep money from manufacturers, what's our next move? They formed group purchasing organizations. And through these group purchasing organizations, now instead of keeping rebate dollars that have been relabeled or if you will, renamed, they can charge fees, management fees for managing the GPO, and those fees, whatever they can come up with, they can create these fees. They can charge formularies, compliance fees, things like they can charge now these fees to the manufacturers. Those monies that the manufacturers pay come out of the bucket for rebates. They're called GMF, GPO management fees. It's complex. And again, I want to stress rebates aren't bad. What's bad is the manipulation of those rebates. If the PBM negotiates with the manufacturer the best deal it can get and then says, hey, we're containing your costs and here's what we believe our service is worth, and charge $20 per member per month instead of hiding it and charging 30 or 40 per member per month. Transparency brings down cost. Just like the state of Ohio. And so here's the bottom line here, and I'm wrapping up. Stay with me. Here's the bottom line here. What we're ultimately trying to uncover here and help you uncover is how much money the PBMs are putting in their bank account. The game doesn't work. The PBM with the biggest rebate minimum guarantee and the biggest discounts in the claims pricing, if that worked, we wouldn't be where we are today in the news. We wouldn't. What happens is the PBMs behave differently after the plan goes live. In fact, many of them have analysts that, based upon the contract, look for ways to generate revenue after the plan goes live. That's the problem. The genius of the PBM's management fee or service fee, how much it keeps in the bank above and beyond the administrative fee, whether it's per paid claim, per employee per month, or per member per month. The beauty of what the PBM keeps is hidden right here in the plan's final cost. Because when the plan overpays here in the form of spreads and is underpaid here in the form of rebates, that increases the plan's cost, and that increase is the PBM's management fee. And for the record, I'm all for a PBM charging whatever it can charge and a plan agreed to that number, provided there's no deceptive practices taking place behind the scenes that their client is unaware of. I'm all for it. Charge whatever you can charge. But I'm not for taking advantage of people who don't have the information that the PBMs have because they intentionally withhold it so they have an advantage. Not in healthcare. Car repair shop, advertising, go for it. People aren't dying. The CEO of CVS Health, again, this is public information. I try not to share stuff that just isn't backed, where it's not sourced. In a 2018 earnings call, and no, I'm not going to go there. The CEO said this: we underwrite contracts, overall level of profitability, and many levers available to pull depending on the preferences of our clients. Like, in layman's terms, here's what he's saying: we're going to make as much money as we possibly can. The amount of money that we're going to make is going to ultimately depend on how sophisticated or unsophisticated our clients are around pharmacy benefits management practices. That's what that means. This acronym, earnings after cash disbursements, is a fancy way of saying the PBM's management fee. It takes into account all the cash flows into a PBM's bank account. Administrative fees, the fees paid to get access to a pharmacy network, the electronic claims adjudication, the DIR fees, direct, indirect remuneration, that are fees that are charged back to a pharmacy after the claim has been adjudicated. Ingredient costs and manufacturer revenue. All these revenue sources, the money lands in the PBM's bank account and they're fully aware of it. And they're trying to hold on as to much of it as possible. And so they reimburse pharmacies less than what they receive from the plan sponsor here. They pay you or reimburse you or your client less than what they receive here from the manufacturer. Those are two examples of cash disbursements. Whatever is left over is what the PBM is putting in its bank account. The new path says this: the highest standard of care, when it is true to the legal language, is a fiduciary. It obligates the client, the PBM, to act in the client's best interest at all times legally. And ideally, the PBM makes money one way through an administrative fee, and it foregoes all of the revenues here. Now, that's not the only way to get there. Maybe you want the PBM to take spreads, and maybe it'll help with your costs and cash flow and paying the bills when they come in. But if you do that, then at a minimum, you must know how much the PBM is keeping, even if you allow it to keep rebates or spreads. Without knowing that and having the same level of access to information or a very similar level of information to verify that all of this is true, there is no radical transparency. There is no fiduciary standard. And listen, again, I just like to show proof. I talked about earnings after cash disbursements. What part is the PBM keeping? Prime Therapeutics dwarfs us in size. We took on this client, um, and in the first year, cut their costs by 60%. Prime Therapeutics, because of their business model, listen, they've got the pharmacies and the specialty pharmacies, and they want all the drugs to flow through there so that they can generate the revenue. It just leads to higher costs to the clients because we don't have those levers to pull. We wouldn't pull them if we couldn't as a fiduciary. The point I want to make here is that this $35 difference PM PM between us and them is the earnings after cash disbursements. It is at a minimum $35 PM that they were making off of this client. The worst part of this, and I hope you can see this, is that this $35 PM was higher than the drugs cost. That's why the FTC is getting involved. I hope they have folks who are experts in this industry to help them identify this. There's no guarantee that they're going to be able to see this. I hope that they do. They were charging more for their management fee, their earnings after cash disbursement, than what the drugs cost. Can't happen. Not in healthcare. And I'm wrapping up here. So listen, you're here at the contemplation stage. You recognize a problem exists. Maybe you want to do better for your clients. You want to help your firm grow. Maybe you want to break into the PBM industry. That, because you sat in on this webinar, does not get you to this stage, and it certainly doesn't get you to this stage. You've got more work to do if you're serious about whatever problem you've identified that exists for you or your company. Now you got to take some action, and a webinar ain't enough. And then even after you take the action, the maintenance part is the toughest part. And I'm listen, this isn't saying a whole lot. What I'm about to tell you. We've got the first certified program that also happens to be backed by a major university that teaches pharmacy benefits management from an insider's perspective. The reason this ain't saying a lot is because the entire industry, up until 4 or 5 years ago when we launched this program, benefited by keeping its clients' heads in the sand. That's how it made money. It didn't want you to get smart about pharmacy benefits management. This is a game changer. Go out on the website, do a search for certified pharmacy benefits specialist, do a search out there for it, read the testimonials about the folks that come through uh, the program and the career track that many of them are now on, because they just have knowledge now that their peers don't. And companies are benefiting from it. Quick anecdote here. Um, I graduated from Michigan State College of Business, and Eli Broad, he pronounces it Broad, our business school is named after him. I went through college, never knew who he was, read his autobiography later on after graduating college. He's the only person in the history of America to be a founder of two Fortune 500 companies. A founder of two Fortune 500 companies, KB Homes and Sun Life Financial. He believes education is the key to skyrocketing healthcare costs. Might be someone we want to listen to. So listen, I know nothing about automobiles, never have. But just like you, I need to get my vehicle repaired every now and then. And I have a little angst about going in there and not being knowledgeable or sophisticated about cars, that car repair shop will take advantage of me. My only options are to act like I know what I'm talking about, beat my hand on the desk, and decline services that I probably need and accept some that I don't. Unless the car repair shop that I go to won't take advantage of my unsophistication around cars. I'd rather have the knowledge so I don't have to worry about that. I hope that you feel the same way now about pharmacy benefits. That's my time today. I've got a few questions that have come in. Let me see here. What do I think of NADAC pricing? I go into that in the course, Santiago. Here's what I'm going to say. Listen to me. Um, at the end of the day, what you or your client should be trying to do is get back all the discounts that the PBM has negotiated with the pharmacy. And when there's overages in the PBM's performance, the PBM pays it back to you. It doesn't matter what the price benchmark is if that is happening. It doesn't matter what the price benchmark is if that is happening. If I am unsophisticated around pharmacy benefits, then I might take a stab at NADAC. If I'm unsophisticated and I just want to try to do something different, I don't want to learn about it, I might take a stab at NADAC. But at the end of the day, even NADAC, we back it into AWP to see how it's performing when we're comparing it to other PBMs. Everything is backed into AWP. You pay NADAC, the cost of the drug, the national average drug acquisition cost, and then you factor in whatever fee that they're charging on top of that cost. You couple those two fees. Okay, let's compare this to the AWP minus. And what you will typically see about 50-50 when the PBM is radically transparent, no spreads. 50% of the time, NADAC is lower when you add in that professional dispensing fee or whatever fee that you might call it on top of the ingredient costs. 50% of the time NADAC is lower, and 50% of the time when the PBM is radically transparent, the AWP minus is lower. The bottom line is, how much money is the PBM keeping from the ingredient cost transaction? That's the bottom line at the end of the day. Um, uh, am I familiar with any 340B entities that are sharing their savings? Um, no, no, I'm not. I haven't had those discussions. But what I will tell you is, um, most PBMs now are in the 340B game, including us. When that PBM is radically transparent, again, it's what you negotiate in the contract, right? It's what you negotiate in the contract. That PBM is radically transparent. It should be sharing with you, uh, what it's paying out for those 340B drugs. Uh, Patrick, I don't. I keep the slides in house. We don't share them. What I will tell you is you'll get a an email tomorrow morning with access to watch a recording of this as many times as you want.